Rich people are told they succeeded because they developed superior self-discipline and willpower. What if I told you discipline is actually easy when you have money? This sounds wrong because we believe self-control is a personal trait rather than economic privilege. But there's something that doesn't quite add up. Why do wealthy people seem effortlessly disciplined while poor people constantly struggle with willpower? The discipline privilege trap works by hiding how money buys away temptation and structures environment. Wealthy people don't resist temptation through willpower. They eliminate temptation through purchasing power. Think about the last time you struggled with self-control. Were you resisting something you couldn't afford to remove from your environment? The system creates two completely different relationships with self-discipline depending on economic resources. For wealthy people, discipline means engineering environments that automate good choices. Hire personal chef who only prepares healthy food. Hire trainer who shows up at your door. Hire assistant who manages your schedule. For poor people, discipline means using raw willpower to resist temptations constantly present. Walk past McDonald's daily while hungry. Resist buying lottery tickets at checkout. Say no to comfort purchases when stressed. This explains something curious about how willpower gets distributed across economic classes. Subscribe to Prof. Jung. Explained if you want to see how money affects self-control. Share this with someone who thinks poor people just lack discipline. Wealthy people automate discipline through environmental design purchased with money. Poor people must constantly exert willpower against environments designed to drain it. Same word, discipline. Completely different psychological cost and completely different success rates. Consider how each group handles the simple goal of eating healthy. The wealthy person hires nutritionist, personal chef, and meal delivery service. Healthy food appears automatically. Junk food never enters their controlled environment. No willpower required. The poor person must walk past fast food restaurants daily, must resist cheap processed food at grocery stores, must cook after exhausting workday. Every meal requires active willpower expenditure. The environmental asymmetry creates what psychologists might call the willpower depletion gap. Wealthy people preserve willpower because money removes most decisions requiring self-control. Poor people exhaust willpower, making constant choices between immediate comfort and long-term goals. One group's discipline is environmental, the other group's discipline is psychological. Environmental discipline is sustainable. Psychological discipline depletes rapidly. But here's where the strategy becomes more sophisticated. Money doesn't just remove temptation, it actually restructures incentives to align short-term and long-term interests. Wealthy people don't resist pleasures. They can afford better versions that don't conflict with goals. Want entertainment? Hire a personal trainer who makes exercise enjoyable. Want food? Afford restaurants with healthy, delicious options. Want relaxation? Afford spa treatments instead of stress eating. Do you notice how rich people's vices seem healthier than poor people's vices? The vice quality gap reveals the trap. Wealthy people drink expensive wine and poor people drink cheap beer. Wealthy people hire massage therapists and poor people eat comfort food. Wealthy people vacation in nature and poor people watch television. The behaviors serving similar psychological needs have drastically different health and productivity consequences. The system also exploits what researchers call decision fatigue in resource scarcity. Poor people make hundreds more daily decisions than wealthy people. Should I buy gas or groceries? Can I afford this medical appointment? Which bill gets paid late? Each decision depletes willpower reserves before encountering the discipline choices that supposedly separate success from failure. Wealthy people outsource most decisions to assistants and services. Their willpower remains fresh for occasional strategic choices. Consider how different economic classes handle morning routines praised in productivity literature. The wealthy person wakes naturally after full sleep in quiet bedroom. Personal trainer arrives for private session. Chef prepares nutritious breakfast. Assistant has organized day's priorities. Zero willpower required. The poor person wakes to alarm after insufficient sleep in noisy apartment. Considers whether to exercise or save time. Grabs whatever food is quick. Manages own schedule while commuting. Every step requires active discipline. The routine asymmetry means wealthy people's morning discipline is environmental automation. Poor people's morning discipline is continuous willpower expenditure. One approach is sustainable indefinitely. The other approach depletes before noon. Yet both get called discipline as if they're comparable psychological achievements. But there's something even more insidious about how discipline privilege affects long-term planning. Wealthy people can be disciplined about future goals because present needs are satisfied. Poor people must choose between present survival and future planning. Discipline requires mental space for delayed gratification. Constant survival pressure fills all mental space with immediate concerns. The temporal orientation gap means wealthy people can afford patience while poor people face pressure for immediate results. Save for retirement or pay rent. Eat healthy or eat affordably. Invest in education or survive this month. These aren't discipline failures. They're impossible choices where both options are necessary. Have you ever noticed that financial discipline advice assumes you have money to discipline? The advice presumes surplus to manage rather than scarcity to survive. Budget carefully. Automate savings. Invest consistently. All require having enough money that discipline determines allocation. Below that threshold, discipline can't create money that doesn't exist. The system maintains itself through what economists call the self-control attribution error. Wealthy people attribute their maintained habits to superior discipline rather than superior resources. Poor people internalize this attribution and blame their willpower rather than their circumstances. This prevents both groups from recognizing that discipline is largely purchased rather than cultivated. But perhaps the most sophisticated aspect involves how stress affects self-control capacity. Wealthy people face fewer daily stressors because money solves most common problems. Poor people face constant stress from financial insecurity. Chronic stress measurably impairs decision-making and willpower. The group with fewer resources also has fewer cognitive resources for exercising discipline. There's also a sleep dimension where discipline and rest create feedback loops. Wealthy people can afford sufficient sleep because financial security enables rest. Quality sleep improves decision-making and self-control. Poor people sacrifice sleep to work multiple jobs or manage survival logistics. Sleep deprivation destroys willpower and judgment. The group most needing discipline has biology working against them. Consider how different economic classes handle the discipline of saving money. Wealthy person automates transfers to investment accounts never seen. The money disappears before temptation exists. Poor person must manually resist spending every dollar while needs exceed income. Same goal of saving, but completely different psychological mechanisms and success probabilities. The saving asymmetry reveals that wealthy people's financial discipline is automation purchased with surplus. Poor people's financial discipline is deprivation maintained through willpower against legitimate needs. Calling both discipline ignores that one is environmental design and other is psychological torture. But there's another layer that makes discipline privilege particularly destructive. It creates moral judgment where environmental advantage gets credited as personal virtue. Wealthy people believe they earned success through superior character. Poor people are told they remain poor due to character defects. This moral framework prevents recognizing that discipline is resource-dependent rather than person-dependent. The character attribution means policy conversations focus on teaching discipline rather than providing resources. Programs emphasize personal responsibility instead of environmental restructuring. Solutions target individual willpower rather than systemic barriers. The discipline mythology prevents addressing actual causes of behavioral differences across economic classes. Can you think of anyone who became disciplined by becoming poor rather than disciplined by becoming wealthy? The discipline pattern reveals the direction of causation. Wealth enables discipline. Discipline doesn't reliably create wealth. People who gain money suddenly find discipline much easier. People who lose money suddenly struggle with habits that previously seemed effortless. This direction reveals itself in lottery winner studies and inheritance patterns. People who suddenly acquire wealth find maintaining healthy habits becomes dramatically easier. They hire help, restructure environments, and eliminate friction from good choices. People who suddenly lose wealth through job loss or medical crisis watch their discipline collapse despite unchanged character. The environmental support disappears, and willpower alone proves insufficient. There's also an addiction dimension where discipline privilege determines recovery success. Wealthy addicts enter private rehabs with ongoing support systems. They return to restructured environments with temptation removed. Poor addicts attend free programs and return to environments where addiction triggers remain omnipresent. Same disease, drastically different environmental support for sustained discipline. The recovery asymmetry shows that discipline isn't overcoming temptation through character strength. It's having resources to remove temptation from your environment. Wealthy people recovering from addiction can afford to never see their drug of choice again. Poor people must walk past liquor stores and drug dealers daily while maintaining sobriety through willpower alone. Do you find it easier to maintain discipline when your environment supports it? The environmental dependency reveals that what we call self-control is largely environment control. You can resist sweets when none are in the house. You can't resist when they're on the counter. Wealthy people pay to keep temptations out of houses. Poor people face temptations in every affordable environment. The system perpetuates itself because wealthy people who maintain discipline credit their character rather than their resources. Poor people who struggle blame themselves rather than recognizing environmental disadvantages. Meanwhile, actual research shows willpower functions identically across economic classes when environment and stress are controlled. The difference is purchased environmental design, not inherent psychological strength. There's also what behavioral economists call friction costs in maintaining discipline. Every obstacle between you and a goal requires willpower to overcome. Wealthy people pay to remove friction. Gym and building, healthy food delivered, distractions eliminated. Poor people face maximum friction. Gym requires commute, healthy food requires shopping and cooking, distractions are everywhere in crowded living spaces. The friction asymmetry means wealthy people expend minimal willpower per disciplined action. Poor people expend maximum willpower for identical actions. Over time, this compounds dramatically. The group with purchased low-friction environments maintains habits indefinitely. The group facing high-friction environments exhausts willpower and abandons habits despite identical initial commitment. Consider the simple discipline of reading daily. Wealthy person has quiet home office, audiobook subscription, and time protected by assistants. Zero friction to reading habit. Poor person shares noisy apartment, works multiple jobs, and manages all life logistics personally. Maximum friction to any reading habit. Same discipline goal, completely different friction cost determining success probability. And perhaps most remarkably, the system has convinced people that discipline is equally accessible to everyone when actually having money to structure your environment around good choices is the primary determinant of sustained behavioral success. While lacking money means fighting uphill battle against environments designed to extract through temptation.